what do we have here? The Sony RX0, the smallest 1-inch camera you're gonna find. So, in the box, let's check it out. Okay, we've got some paperwork. Not gonna read that. Okay, here we go. We've got the camera, which we're not gonna open yet. We got a USB cable, lanyard. Lanyards are important. We've got the battery, NP BJ1 battery, so not gonna work with my Sony FDR X3000 batteries. Got a charger, a little hook thing, I don't know what that is, and that's it. That's everything in the box. Let's check out the battery. Looks like a battery. Check out this thing, don't know what that is. Charger, pretty standard charger. Now let's get to the important part, the camera. Oh, look at that thing. That is tiny. That's a 1-inch sensor. This is the same sensor that's on the RX100 series and on the Phantom 4 Pro line of cameras. That's amazing. So the Sony RX0 has a 1-inch Exmor RS CMOS sensor with a 15.3 megapixel resolution. It has a 24mm equivalent f4.0 lens. It has a 1 to 32,000 anti-distortion shutter. It can do high frame rates up to 960 FPS for super slow motion and can do 4K footage if it's attached to an external video recorder. The Sony Play Memory app has the ability to control 5 cameras at once for some serious Matrix style action. It is waterproof down to 10 meters or 33 feet and shockproof up to a 2-meter drop and crush proof up to 200 kilograms. It uses the NP BJ1 battery, so not the same as my Sony FDR X3000, and according to Sony, it can do 240 shots or 60 minutes of recording per battery. Now, this is a pretty expensive camera at $700, but for my intended purposes, I think this is a serious contender for my full-time B camera. So the first thing I noticed about this camera is obviously the size. If you compare it to my Yeelight, which is a pretty standard GoPro clone, you can see it's not as long, is a little wider, except when you consider the lens. They're about the same width when it comes to the lenses, so it's just a little bit shorter, but it's about the same size as a GoPro. The build quality is fantastic and feels very sturdy in the hand. On the top, it has a shutter button and a power button. On the front, you can see the serious sensor on this thing looking back at you, almost into your soul. It has 2 front-facing microphones, so I'm excited to see how the audio straight out of the camera sounds. On the side, it has the battery compartment, and on the bottom, you can see the 1/4-inch tripod adapter. On the back is a non-touchscreen display and an assortment of buttons. You've got options, recording, menu, all sorts of things on the back here. There is also a door for the micro USB, not USB-C, the mini HDMI, and there's a spot for a 3.5mm audio in, which is one of the main reasons why I went to this camera first. Booting the camera up is done in a flash, so let's set it up real quick. So we'll do a full review of this camera in the future, but there's a few things we need to talk about when it comes to cameras, especially on an initial impression of a camera. And number one being image quality. Image quality, if you're gonna spend $700 on a camera, is the most important thing. So I'm currently filming this on my Panasonic Lumix G7. It's a Micro Four Thirds mirrorless camera. So let's swap it out and see how this compares to the Sony RX0. And this is the Sony RX0. Now this is the audio coming straight out of the camera. I do not have my Rode Video Micro plugged into it. So this is the audio test. So 1, 2, 3, audio test, Sony RX0. And you can see I'm about arm's width away. Okay, and this is the audio when plugged into a Rode Video Micro. One of the things I'm noticing right off the bat is I really like that the rear door comes off. It's just held on by this little clip right here. And it comes off so it doesn't get in the way of the cable. Normally you have to like tear off the door on a camera to get it open wide enough sometimes, and this works really well. So I'm really excited to check out this footage and see how it actually looks. We're filming in 1080p by 30 frames per second right now. So there are a few things that I'm just not happy about with this camera before we even get into the full review. Number one is obviously there's no internal 4K on this camera. Now I know Sony's been having some problems with the A63-6500 line, the RX100 4 and 5 recording in 4K, so they probably don't want to make a camera that small try to do 4K, but it is kind of rough that you can't just do 4K, especially for a $700 camera. For $700, I could right now get something like a 70D on Amazon warehouse deals. I could get an RX4, I could get another Lumix G7, so it's kind of, for the price, it's kind of rough, especially the accessories. So the accessories for this thing can turn it into a legitimate filming rig, monitor, cage, all that stuff. The cage for this camera is like $230. There's some serious hits against this camera to start, at least for the casual user. I'm a casual user. From my perspective, these are some serious limitations when it comes to this camera. A huge downside to this camera is it does not have stabilization, which means this is not an action camera. I think you can record action with it, but it is not an action camera. This is an action camera. This is my Sony FDR X3000, and this is probably the best action camera ever made. I love this camera. Now, if the RX0 had the same kind of stabilization that's in this, it might be a serious contender for best camera of the year, but it doesn't. So it's not an action camera, and that's a huge disappointment because I love easy, stable footage. And the third downfall, we already kind of covered it, is the price. It's just, for what you get, the price is pretty high. I think this is not meant to be a casual user camera. I think this is meant to be a professional level camera where you can fit this in places you can't normally fit like a bigger camera. So maybe this is not for the casual user, but we'll see how the footage looks and whether I'll decide to keep this or not, because I do want a small, really good camera to replace this as my, my B camera. Now here's something I've been curious about since I heard about the RX0, and nobody has mentioned this yet that I've seen on YouTube. So let's switch back to the G7. Okay, back on the G7. Now something that I'm really curious about is, can this fit in an action camera gimbal? If it can, that would solve most of my problems with the stabilization, because then I could just bring my little gimbal with me. But I haven't seen this on YouTube yet, so we're gonna find out together. Fits there. Yeah, it doesn't fit. So you can see there, the size fits correctly, but the screw just doesn't match. So with a little bit longer screws, I think this would absolutely work with one of these gimbals, and I think that would make it I think that would be a lot better for this camera if you could get it to work with a gimbal. I think that would actually make it pretty awesome without having to get like a big Jun crane or something, just using like a Feiyutech G5. Pretty good. Maybe I'll see if I can get some longer screws for the review. So the whole reason I'm looking at this camera right now is I'm trying to find a good B camera for my channel. The B camera I've been using, like I said, is my Sony FDR X3000. Fantastic camera, but it is not very good inside. So I really want to get something where I was thinking about getting another mirrorless camera, but I really want like a point and shoot or a camera just like this to be the B camera. So I think next I'm gonna check out either the RX100 Mark V or the Canon PowerShot G7X Mark II. I think that's what it's called. If you guys know anything about those cameras, leave a comment below, let me know what you think. Or if there's another decent B camera out there, leave a comment, let me know. I'm not a huge camera guy, so I'm still trying to learn all this as I go. So let me know what you guys think. Well, if you like what you saw, give this video a big thumbs up and consider subscribing. We do tech reviews every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Well, hey, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure out how to get this teeny tiny little 1-inch sensor camera to work, you can figure it out. Thanks for watching.